The elections in Lesotho, our contributing editor Vuyo Mvoko spoke to political analyst Sofonea Shale about the likelihood of the three nationalist parties forming a coalition, among other issues.
I think in the pre-election campaigns, it has been quite clear that the Congress Party will really like to see that coalition of Congress parties. But again, in the categorization of who the nationalist is and who the Congress is, I think
that's where it gets murky.
That is where the problem is, because for me, the All Lesotho Convention wouldn't really fit the categorization of a nationalist organization, particularly because you will realize that the leader and the founder comes from a very strong Congress background. In fact, he has served in almost all the governments previously, including the National Party government. But we are told that right from that time, he has been known by the Prime Minister and identified as a member of the Congress Party. So it wouldn't really be correct, I think.
So strictly speaking, there are no ideological differences?
Well, for me, people may wish that there are ideological differences, but they don't exist. Even where parties may begin to see differences here, when you look at the global political economy within which the very same politics have been played out, you'll find that at the end of the day they become irrelevant.
So what are the likely scenarios, practically, that is?
Well, when we look at how parties have performed, it will be very difficult, I think, for any of the alliances, because for me it is the DC-LCD alliance on the one hand and the ABC-BNP Reformed Congress on the other. So I think it will be very difficult for any of the two alliances on its original form to establish a government. But I think there is going to be a likelihood that smaller parties are going to get some seats, and they are actually going to determine who the government becomes.
And if you were to place your bets, where would you put your money?
Well, I would say there are more prospects for the DC alliance, DC-LCD alliance, but I think there's also a very interesting situation where if the LPC, which I think is going to get one seat, and the BCP are going to get 1-1. But I am not sure whether they can easily decide to be part of the DC-LCD alliance. For BCP, I think the main issue has always been all the other fragments are not Congress in real terms until they come back to where they come from, that is the BCP. And with the LPC, in my reading, there has been some issues before elections. So I think if those issues are resolved and the LPC and the BCP with the 1-1 seats that they are likely to get, they join, then the DC-LCD alliance will have 61. But again, if the ABC, BNP, and Reformed Congress alliances are able to negotiate the former bloc of parties in parliament, they will get around 59. And if the BCP decides not to join the so-called Congress, then it will create a very serious situation. That will be 60-60. So I think right now there will be very intense negotiations by the two alliances to make sure that they win. But I think the major problem is not where people are looking at the establishment of the government. For me, the more serious challenge is how will whatever government is emerging out of this be able to function effectively and properly and take, say, 5-year term, particularly because we have not made necessary reforms to give stability to the coalition government. And because we have not done it before elections, it will also be very difficult to do it right now. You know why? Because an alliance that will be in opposition may feel like it will be for their advantage if the government is not so stable. So they may not be eager to support the constitutional reforms that may be needed to stabilize the government. So I think that is a very difficult situation at the moment.
Which then brings me to my next question. Although unlikely at this stage, theoretically, it's a possibility. And that is the question of a government of national unity. How possible is that, where you have all the parties together in the interest of Lesotho?
Yes, I think just before elections, I developed three possible scenarios, and the first one was either of the alliances gaining a majority and then taking over government. And the second one being where the political minors, the smaller parties, are becoming kingmakers actually, where it will be difficult for the original alliances to make government on their own, and then they will lobby to be supported by the smaller parties. But then the other scenario will be where the ABC and the DC will look at each other and say, why don't we form government? And I think that is a possibility that cannot be ruled out. In fact, if things go to that direction, we may be able to have stable government. But again, for those who have been observing Lesotho politics with keen interest, that may actually be a tint on democracy, because once we have strong government with weak opposition, then the tendency is to have arrogant politicians in power, people who may not want to listen, people who may not even be shaken. But again, the problem is if you have too much strong opposition, then you have unstable government. So I think right where we are, we need a balance of the two.
You don't think, politicians would have learnt their lessons, because this particular election has actually been very humbling to most politicians?
In fact, I think all of them, because if you go back and recall the content of the campaign, each and every one of them wanted the outright majority, wanted to be vindicated, wanted to be appraised as the best of the best. But I think, as we are saying, the outcome has actually not said that. The outcome is sending a very strong signal that Basotho wouldn't really want to see politicians conducting business as usual, antagonizing one another, chasing one another, witch hunting and stuff. In fact, what they are saying is that now it is the time for the new chapter in the Lesotho politics of collaboration and cooperation and working together. So I think that is a message.
But do you think is that a deliberate message, or is it just an outcome that everyone has to live with?
Well, we can't really say it is a deliberate message per se. It is what we read out of the outcome. Because when people go for polls, they don't really say, let us elect a coalition government. Let us send this particular message. Each and every one of the voters cast the vote with the understanding that what he or she is doing is to put in power that preferred political leader. So the message that we are reading out of that outcome is that of collaboration and cooperation rather than antagonism.
Well, let's hope Basotho win at the end of the day.
That is our hope.